guys, and welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about hacking biology. When I talk about hacking biology, I'm talking about how we are really shifting our nutrition and agriculture towards a future that is truly aligning with all the futures we've talked about previously. I can't really imagine living in a world where, we live in virtual realities, we are, traveling to Mars and all that kind of stuff, and we're still eating hamburgers and the old regular food. So usually, in documentary we talk about like a very dystopian future, a very dark future. But funny enough, for this episode, it takes a little bit more of a utopian turn, in my eyes at least, because truthfully, I think we already live in a pretty dystopian world when it comes to our nutrition and our eating habits. Most of the people in the world are obese or starving. It's this really weird dichotomy where, like in the West, I think over 30 to 40% of people are actually like scientifically obese, and then in other parts of the world people are literally dying because they don't have enough food. So I think that goes as close to dystopia as you could imagine, and I think the number one deaths in the West are because of heart diseases, diabetes, and a lot of the different things that really come from poor health and poor nutrition. So when we talk about hacking biology, I think the way nutrition is going to change is threefold. And the first one really goes towards moving towards a more scientific way of consuming the things we need. The way I look at it is in comparison, I'll call the replacement / optimization movement. We already now have a lot of people that call themselves biohackers, and instead of just eating regular foods, we try to really dive down for what does our body actually need? What are the macronutrients? What are the micronutrients? What are the different things, the minerals that our body needs in order to perform at its best? So then once we break it down scientifically, why do we still need to, make it basically a guessing game of where we eat, like maybe a fruit here, maybe some lentils there, maybe like a piece of bread there, and all this kind of stuff, instead of actually having, for example, some juice, something that actually has everything exactly as we need. And it wouldn't be juice, more than likely this can go to a whole level where we actually whether we shoot as syringes or we take it as tablets or whatever it is, where we can take in a very simple way all the nutrients for a day that we need that will allow us to perform at our best without all the trash, without all the disease causing fats or carcinogens that we currently consume. Because the problem is it is really hard. It is so hard living healthily right now in 2018, because there's, with everything that's good, there's always something unhealthy associated with it. Maybe you make yourself a sandwich and the tomatoes are healthy, the lettuce is healthy, like all the stuff is right, but then there's gluten, so you're probably gonna die in the bread. Or maybe you have some meat and then apparently that is packed with carcinogens. So everything, there's always new documentaries coming out of what's unhealthy. So once we can actually break past this, and this is going to be a big part of this movement, is actually moving towards making it more scientific. Right now we have so many things to worry about, but I think nutrition is coming more and more to the forefront. And the problem is, over the past years, there wasn't any proper money being funneled into it. And any of the scientific studies, they're usually done with maybe 50 people, maybe 60 people, maybe sometimes as bad as 10 people. And then we're extrapolating it. We're testing something on 10 people, and then we say, well, this is gonna work for everybody, right? So this is how a lot of these fad diets happen. But I think in the coming 30 years, we'll really break nutrition down to a science, where we know this is what works, this is what doesn't, and this is how we can actually feed a person exactly what they need in the right amounts, personalized to them. So that you go to, just like a doctor, you could go to a personal nutritionist, they probably do some tests on you, and then you probably get delivered to your house, the exact vials of what you need to consume daily. And the interesting thing about this is that it can be applied to two different spectrums. One, this can be used, for example, to actually solve a lot of the hunger problems in poor countries. Because, starvation and food problems, and really, we're not talking about starvation as much as malnourishment, the lack of truly nutritious foods, the lack of, the nutrients that they need. So if we could, for example, have that delivered to, all the poor countries in the world and have them get the right things that they need, it will more than likely in the future also be a lot more economical than actually having to grow all that food. Secondly, it will work with something like UBI. With UBI, we're most likely going to get not only money deposited to our accounts, and something we'll talk about in a later episode, but also I would guess that the government would actually provide monthly resources, meaning, for example, that you get your daily food intake, so to say, because you're no longer going to the store to buy food, but much rather you get your daily dose of nutrients that you need, both in macros and micros, so that you basically food and your health is taken care of. And then third and lastly, this will actually help with overpopulation, because one of the issues that we have when we talk about overpopulation is the limited amount of arable land. Because as for example, humans, there's more and more humans, we need more urban areas, but at the same time we also need more farms. We need more farms, whether it's to grow the wheat, to raise the cows and all that kind of stuff, where we're moving closer and closer towards land problems. But if we can create all the food that we need in labs, where we know, for example, it wouldn't be food, but much rather where we look at food less as this big thing that we're doing. Every breakfast, every lunch, it takes up an hour. What we're moving towards is so focused on speed and efficiency, where it would really fit in that we live in, just like we already now have with the supplement culture, move that towards being a real, scientific, healthy, good for the world movement, where you can take a vial, you get all your micronutrients, macronutrients, and you go on with your day. Now, with all that, some of you might say, but Felix, food goes beyond just the efficiency. Food goes beyond just, getting the things you need and going on with your day. You see, a lot of times, food really, in our culture, in multiple cultures, plays as a big community factor. It takes place in, conversations, trust, building relationships, and so on. So the way I see it is that, yes, we will still have food in the future, but it won't be for survival or for, daily taking care of yourself, but much rather food as an art, right? So that you take your daily things that you need. It won't be, a big meal, but then when you want to take a meal, it will be really treated much more as an art, where we can have, fancy meals. We can still have all the nice things, but if we treat it where it's a much more special occasion, it will work, with problems such as overpopulation. And beyond that, something that we're moving towards that might also help with a lot of these issues is, again, lab-created foods. Something that already happened now that's called cultured meat, right? Because the problem with the meat industry is that there's a lot of health issues with it. Secondly, it takes up a lot of energy, right? Because in order to create a pound of meat, you have to feed those cows and all the animals a lot of actual wheat and different things that vegetarians would eat, and in the process you're taking up a lot of energy. You're taking a lot of arable land, because now you're not just having the stables where the cows are grazing and all that stuff. You also have the fields that are feeding the cows. So there's a lot of issues with the meat industry, and one of the ways they're tackling that right now is where you can still enjoy the protein of meat, where you can still enjoy the taste and the flavor and the structure and texture of meat, is something called cultured meat. And that's something that's already been created, where essentially they're using the DNA and the various, they're taking samples from real meat and recreating it in vitro, in labs. And that's something that's already been happening, that's something that's already being sold. And the move towards that culture, where we can really, on a fraction of the space, for a fraction of the energy costs, create food that's safe, that's healthy, and that's good for the environment. That is the world that I think we're moving towards. And even though we could do this on a large scale for regular types of food, I simply think that we're moving towards a world where it will be a lot more simple, where we won't be, buying actual meals, but much rather, like the biohackers, the one example that they already have, something like Soylent. Although Soylent does not meet all your requirements perfectly, because it has a lot of fat. But the bottom line is, there's a lot of people that have literally already lived on Soylent for months or years, where all they do is 5 times a day, they chug a bottle of Soylent and they're done. There's no more whole foods. There's no more, solid food, so to say. But much rather, it's this movement towards optimization. And I think that's something that we'll more than certainly be seeing in the future. Now, the third and final part are actual physique hacking. You see, we all want the six-pack, we all want the perfect body, and there's tons of programs and supplements and all that kind of crap that's being sold. But I think in the future, once we make it more scientific it's something that will become an actual reality, right? Because we will, if we simply take in, health is simple math, it's calorie intake minus calorie output, right? So if we can break it down to science where, people live off that, and then on top of that, for example, move towards, maybe there's some healthy, not steroids, but there's healthy, optimizations that we can take that won't screw us over in the long run. It is more than certain, I think, that we'll get to this point scientifically where we really figure out, okay, these are the kind of optimizations that a person can go through genetically, for example, in order to put them into the ultimate state where they have the right metabolism, where they have their muscles are faster recovering and are much properly able to take in the nutrients that we feed them. You see, a lot of the process in biology, which we already now truly understand, but if we can break the things that we feed our body down to better science, we can truly improve and enhance the way we function based reality. Because I think in the future we'll really have split camps. We'll have people that really, they say, forget about base reality, this is basically analog, we're moving to digital, we want the world where we can have absolute utter control. But I think there'll still be a huge segment that will be very nostalgic about our physical bodies. That will be, this is what you might say God gave you or what nature gave you, and you want to stick with it. But while everybody else, the transhumanists, for example, really mutate themselves to whole new levels, and you want to some extent keep up, you'll still find ways to maintain your human shape, your human form in base reality, but optimize it to become as, to always push the limitations, because that is something we've always as a species wanted to do. We've always wanted to push our limitations. We always wanted to be the best versions of ourselves. And that is something we're definitely moving towards. Now, but what's the gap holding us back from this potential utopia, if you see it that way, where you can get all the nutrition you want very easily, very fast, so that you're healthy in the best shape possible, while at the same time still able to enjoy food kind of like as an art, as we said, to still sit down with your community, enjoy amazing food that's healthy and good for you without putting the same environmental stresses on the environment that we're given. You see, the biggest gap, I think, is both the food and the pharma industry, because what we have to understand is that it's an old boys club with a lot of money and a lot of influence. But what we still got to keep in mind is that many of these industries have been disrupted in the past. I mean, one of the best examples I would say is the tobacco industry. You see, the tobacco industry used to be this big bastion in the past 100 years. But ever since the 2000s and the active campaigns against it have allowed us to really take away power from it. And, at least in the United States, cigarettes are less and less popular than ever. And the lobby is truly, losing power. So what we really have to look towards is twofold. One, I think we need more and more startups actually actively looking into that space. Unfortunately, we don't have many startups that think, for example, agriculture or food or nutrition are exciting enough subjects. And in fact, we only have much of the opposite. We have a lot of charlatans, that care about making, supplements, basically creating BS because we know the FDA isn't regulating hard enough, or they just pour together some, fillers with some, wonder herbs more or less that promise weight loss, but we don't have any true innovation. We don't have any real startups trying to build, what does the future of nutrition look like? What does the future of, health and biology look like? So we need more innovative startups tapping into the space and raising funding. And I guess that's part number two. We need a lot more money going into actual scientific research to find out what is the truth. Because right now we face so much misinformation and lack of information. No, there's certainly no lack of information. There's simply misinformation and lack of quality information. Because one day you might think, you basically got to chuck oil to be healthy. The next day you say, fats are unhealthy for you. You got to eat a slow carb diet. And then the day maybe you hear that, go back to the Stone Ages where, we only ate meat. So you only eat meat. So there's basically no way of winning in the nutrition world right now. So I think it's important that we have properly funded scientific studies that are properly peer reviewed and held to the same standards that almost anything else in the scientific community is held to, which supplements and nutrition, unfortunately right now, it's just not the case. And once we have the knowledge, I think a lot more startups will also start going towards space. Once we can say the space be getting legitimized, where there's real money, there's real respect, and so on, more people will start going towards it. And truly, right now, I think it's only a question of time. Because the fact of the matter is that the food industry is one of the oldest industries in the world, and it's also one of the most stable industries in the world. Because whether, the stock market goes up or down, or whether, real estate goes up or down, people still gotta eat. You might be homeless, but you still gotta eat. It's the most fundamental industry in the world that will always be able to be profitable. It's only a question of time until we can finally disrupt the space in order to go towards a future where nobody in the world needs to be starving of malnutrition, where we can have everybody live healthily, where we don't have to have the majority of the population dying of essentially poor nutrition, right? Meaning in the Western world, again, heart diseases, diabetes, a lot of these are more or less self-inflicted causes because of a long history of poor nutrition. So if we can fix all of that, we could really solve some of the biggest problems that we currently face. And when you say biggest problems, just look at the death toll. Literally more people die of heart diseases and diabetes than die in wars. So, sometimes we traumatize a lot of the things that are happening. We use it to distract us from the true problems that are happening. And I think if we can really take a deep dive into nutrition and health, then that will be a true move towards a more utopian future where everybody can be healthy and focus on things that they need to be focusing on rather than all the problems that come out of it. So guys, I hope you liked this episode. Leave some thoughts below. I want to hear from you whether you think, this kind of like optimized lifestyle is ideal and utopian, or whether you think, this is not what we're meant to do. This is so unnatural. We're meant to eat like whole foods. We're meant to pick the apples from the trees and eat them. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is an exciting future, or should we really stick to the roots of how we, used to consume food and so on? And whether you think, this is an important subject or not. So leave your thoughts below, and I will see you next time.